Well, it gives me great pleasure to bring on board Mr. R.C. Bhargava, Chairman of Maruti, India's biggest auto company, which has a dominant market share of more than 40%. Auto is one sector or one category where Indian domestic manufacturing by far is one of the most competitive in the world, and Indian companies like Maruti also have managed to export in major markets like Europe, which in a sense are very stringent when it comes to emission norms. And when you are especially exporting in a market like Europe, when you are dealing with the BMWs, the Audis and the Mercedes of the world, that just tells you that how Indian car companies are not only effective, their products are acceptable, their products are world class. And managing auto, just to bring context for our viewers here, is that managing auto, I think, is managing a very complex supply chain. It is not that one large factory where you have size and capacity and you can manufacture in bulk and keep your cost low. Manufacturing of auto involves merging and managing and a marriage of a lot of complex supply chain, and Maruti is manufacturing them in Gujarat and in Delhi, which in a sense are not really large dominated port cities. So why is that Indian auto industry has been successful globally? And if Indian auto industry is successful globally, what are the parallels which can one draw in terms of taking an indication or leaf from best practices which need to be taken forward? Mr. Bhargava, what is your view on the Indian manufacturing sector? Time and again we've tried, and with the exception of auto, pharma, some gems and jewelry, and barring one or two niche engineering companies, Indian manufacturing sector in a sense has been in a doldrums.
See, it's a fairly complicated issue because it requires various changes to be made in the way the government and the political system looks upon manufacturing. It changes how the bureaucracy deals with manufacturing and the growth of industry. And it requires changes in how the entrepreneurs and managements of industry go about their business. Because over these last 60, 70 years, we have built up a whole ecosystem which is actually quite adverse to competitive manufacturing.
Mr. Bhargava, we put the spotlight on Atmanirbhar Bharat as the way to revive the India story. What will it take for the country to achieve this?
You're absolutely right. This Atmanirbhar Mission is not what some people interpret it to mean, that shut yourself from the rest of the world and become just totally self-reliant. I think that's a total misunderstanding of what the Prime Minister has said. It actually means that we should improve our manufacturing and do a lot of manufacturing products here which we don't do today, which we should have been able to do and which we could do. And that requires us to become more competitive and grow manufacturing, which is what we were talking about a little while back. Now, to do that, the whole manufacturing industry in India has to become at a different plane than what it has been operating all these last 70 years. To start with, let me say that it's quite evident that the manufacturing industry, if it's going to grow and become globally competitive, it has to be private sector driven. And the public sector in all these years has never been able to achieve the purpose either of growing the industry, of generating resources which it could put back into growth of industry, of developing technology, of reaching what Pandit Nehru had said the public sector should do, reach the commanding heights of the economy. Nowhere near the commanding heights. And the public sector, in a lot of cases, I don't have specific data to back this up, but I think the public sector in most cases, whether it's infrastructure, whether it's a lot of input for other industries, is actually one of the causes of higher costs of production in India.
Now, if Maruti has managed to adopt best practices, auto is a very complex, very complicated sector, Mr. Bhargav, because it involves multiple products, multiple assembly lines. You followed best practices of following zero inventory. Your margins have been constant, one of the best in the industry. So if Indian auto industry can do it, what others need to do to replicate those manufacturing practices? Because you also acquire land. You also borrow at the same cost, plus or minus here, 1%. You also have to deal with labor, and yet you are able to produce a globally competitive world-class product.
There are a whole lot of things which we have to do to make this happen. The primary objective of the company, which means management and all employees, has to be at all times to look at ways of reducing cost, reducing waste, improving productivity, and finding ways in which efficiency at any stage of the company's operations can be improved. And this is an ongoing program which is 24/7 by 365, and year after year of everybody's focus in the company is how to improve what you're doing. Now, to make this happen, the employees have to be considering themselves as a part of the organization. They must think that it is in their interest that the company becomes more efficient, lower cost, because then the company will grow. If the company grows, opportunities for all employees increase. The career opportunities open up because of expansion. The company makes more profit, and so the company can also give more and more benefits and a better quality of life to employees, which is exactly what has happened in Maruti. And therefore, all employees, including workers in Maruti, work as partners in the company, not as employees. They look that they are partners in the company. They share in what is going to happen. The management itself has kept its expenses very frugal. If you look at management expenses in Maruti and compare that with the similar kind of management expenses in much, much smaller companies, you'll find that Maruti is a much lower cost company than.
Certainly a lot that other companies can emulate from Maruti, as you highlighted. But Mr. Bhargav, Atmanirbhar is just not being self-reliant, but also being globally competitive. If there are 3 or 4 areas that we can immediately act on and actionable ideas that you can share, what would they be? What should the government immediately focus on?
Let me put it this way. Why have we continued to import so much for our industry and not made local production? Because ultimately, if there was a good business opportunity, then somebody would have invested in that opportunity. Or if industry itself felt that they needed to make more locally than import, it would have happened. It's not happened for a couple of reasons. First thing is that because in India, industry's growth has been very small at a low rate. Manufacturing over the years has kept pace with GDP growth because we still remain 14 to 16% of the GDP which we were several decades ago. So GDP and in manufacturing has grown at the same rate. Now, at this low rate of growth, investors, especially foreign investors, have not believed what we've been telling them, come and invest in India because we are a huge market and there's a huge potential for growth here and all that, because they don't see that growth happening. So that's one. The demand for products has grown too slowly. We need to look at that again. The cost of manufacturing in India, we've already discussed, they're much higher than what they should be. So again, that's not happening. And lastly, I think we have a system in this country where it is much easier for manufacturers of components. Let me take the automobile sector. We found that automobile component manufacturers.
So what are the challenges we should be prepared for? Because this is going to be a long road ahead. It's going to be a bumpy road ahead. Everything is not going to be on and off, because Atmanirbharta means that you are rebooting a lot of industries. Some need infrastructure, some need skill, some need government policy intervention, and some need all.
I think everybody in the country, and that requires all political parties, must accept that today making India a highly competitive manufacturing nation is an absolute national priority. This objective should not be subject to political wrangling and political point scoring and such things. Everybody must cooperate in this effort. Number two, that this has to be driven by the private sector, and everything which is required to make industry competitive, including changes in the public sector, including changes in our laws, including changes in the way we price inputs, including changes in the way infrastructure is managed, including maybe the way the labor is organized, because I think we are going about labor also in a wrong way, which is not a productive way. And that needs to be recognized. Thirdly, industrialists themselves have to change their behavior pattern in a manner that they can earn the trust of not only the political system and the bureaucrats, but of the people at large. Because today, the general people, I don't think, have too much trust. There are exceptions, of course. There are exceptional people in industry who are outstanding in terms of their integrity and contribution to the nation. But as a whole, I think industrialists are not considered trustworthy by the people. I think that needs to change. I think we need to understand that labor is a very, very important component of achieving productivity. And unless you manage labor so that they believe that they become partners to the company and work for that company's good, because that is in their real interest. I can go into that, but there's no question today that in today's world, the real interest of labor lies in the growth and prosperity of their companies.
Thank you so much, Mr. Bhargava, for sharing those insights. And there's certainly a lot that fellow industrialists and policymakers can learn from that important interview.